In 1900, the U.S. signed a secret treaty with the Comanche and then sealed it forever. Only one original copy remains, locked in a private collection. What was in that document? Some say it gave away sacred burial lands for oil drilling. Others say it included something even darker and illegal. 1. Why did the U.S. Army burn Quanah Parker's sacred bundle? In 1892, the U.S. Army seized a sacred object from the Comanche, a bundle said to hold maps made by ancient prophets. 2 days later, it was accidentally destroyed in a fire. But no official report, no record of the item, no reason for the raid. Quanah Parker was not just any chief. He was the last Comanche war leader and the son of a white woman, Cynthia Ann Parker, who had been kidnapped as a child and raised fully Comanche. Quanah's bundle wasn't just symbolic. Elders claimed it contained items from the Star Path, an ancient belief that showed Comanche origin from the Pleiades constellation. What made the military so nervous about a religious artifact? One soldier at the time wrote in his personal diary that after the bundle was taken, men began seeing shadows in daylight and hearing drums in the hills. Another patrol member vanished on night duty. His boots were later found tied to a fence post, charred, like they had been struck by lightning. No storm had passed. And here's the kicker. The commanding officer who ordered the seizure reportedly shot himself 2 weeks later. His suicide note? Sealed and buried in Fort Sill archives. Comanche elders claim that the bundle held not just symbols, but instructions on migration routes, astronomical alignments, and even forbidden ceremonies that could blind the eyes of soldiers. The Army called it a primitive item. Then they buried its existence completely. And yet, in 1998, a Comanche archaeologist claimed to have found fragments of a scorched buffalo hide near the fort's fire pit. He wasn't allowed to test it. Why the silence? And what were they really trying to erase? Next, we'll go underground into a cave filled with carved skulls and secrets the Smithsonian never wanted you to know. 2. What was inside the Comanche bone caves found in 1876? In September 1876, during the final campaigns of the Red River War, U.S. cavalry scouts entered Palo Duro Canyon and found something they didn't report in their official logs: a series of hidden caves carved deep into the canyon walls. Inside, they discovered over 200 human skeletons, many arranged in tight spiral patterns, some seated and some standing, as if frozen mid-ceremony. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The bones were carved with glyphs, strange symbols not matching any known Comanche language. Some skulls showed signs of cranial modification, a practice rarely seen among Plains tribes, but documented in ancient South American civilizations like the Nazca. Some skulls had been flattened from birth, while others were stretched to unnatural lengths, giving them an eerie, alien-like appearance. The soldiers immediately contacted officials at the Smithsonian Institution, who dispatched a secret recovery team. Within 3 weeks, every skeleton was boxed, tagged, and shipped east, but none of the remains were ever put on display. In fact, not a single public study was published. Requests for access were denied, citing spiritual sensitivities. Why hide it? Internal memos revealed in a 1994 FOIA request mentioned the caves contained pre-Columbian remains showing cultural deviation, which many took to mean non-native origins. Some suggested the glyphs matched patterns from ancient Siberian cave drawings, opening questions about early trans-Pacific contact. A former Smithsonian archivist later confessed that, in the 1980s, dozens of boxes labeled Comanche cave material were quietly incinerated to avoid cultural conflict. Even today, Comanche elders refuse to speak about the cave, calling it a doorway to the shadow world. The cave entrance has since collapsed, either naturally or deliberately. Up next, we expose a deadly 1930s government operation that may have poisoned Comanche land forever, and it's buried in real declassified maps. 3. Did the U.S. test chemical weapons on Comanche land in the 1930s? In the dusty military archives of Fort Sam Houston, an unassuming map labeled Zone R, Restricted Military Activity, 1931, shows something startling: a red grid overlapping sections of Comanche reservation land in southwest Oklahoma. The surrounding memo simply reads, "Active aerosol deployment, proximity livestock risk. This wasn't just a routine military exercise. By 1932, local Comanche ranchers reported entire herds of cattle dying overnight, their tongues swollen and eyes clouded white. Water in nearby rivers bubbled unnaturally for days, with fish surfacing dead by the hundreds. Locals described a metallic mist that stung their throats and caused vomiting. The tribe petitioned the federal government for answers and received none. Then came a chilling revelation. In 1984, a declassified War Department memo surfaced during a lawsuit involving native land contamination. It mentioned Operation Coyote Mist, an experimental nerve agent field test allegedly conducted between 1931 and 1934. The memo referred to aerosol dispersal trials targeting high desert climates using non-lethal but highly reactive compounds. But the next page, which described health effects, was blacked out entirely. The results? Between 1930 and 1940, death rates among Comanche communities surged by 340%, with liver failure, unexplained tumors, and stillbirths disproportionately affecting those near Zone R. Yet no full investigation was ever launched. Today, the government denies any connection. Even more disturbing, soil samples taken in 2007 from the same area by an independent team showed traces of phosgene and sulfur mustard residue, two deadly WWIRA chemicals banned by the Geneva Protocol of 1925. So why test it on Comanche land? Military historians suggest these areas were chosen for being remote, unmonitored, and legally ambiguous. But some Comanche elders believe it was intentional biological warfare masked as progress. Next, we uncover why the government systematically targeted Comanche shamans and what terrifying power they were afraid of. 4. Why were Comanche shamans targeted in the 1880s? In 1887, a strange directive emerged from the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs. Monitor, detain, or neutralize spiritual influencers suspected of inciting unrest. That year, at least 6 Comanche shamans were arrested without charges, and 4 more simply vanished during tribal ceremonies. Internal Army correspondents warned of unauthorized gatherings exhibiting hostile prophetic tendencies. But what made the shamans such a threat? Comanche medicine men weren't just healers. They were keepers of generational knowledge, experts in weather control, star navigation, and battlefield foresight. One journal entry from a cavalry scout in 1886 reads, "They summoned rain over Fort Clark. Thunder cracked without clouds. My horse bolted like the air itself screamed." Colonel Ethan Miles of the 4th Cavalry feared these supernatural displays would incite rebellion. Diaries recovered after his death revealed a chilling admission. If we cannot suppress their warriors, we must strip them of their visions. In tribal accounts, the years 1885 to 1889 saw a rise in disappearances. Shamans were reportedly taken during sleep, their tents left undisturbed. Survivors spoke of secret detention sites near Fort Sill in the Wichita Mountains, where ceremonies were forbidden, and peyote, long used by shamans for vision quests, was confiscated and burned. The Comanche resistance weakened drastically after this campaign. Spiritual ceremonies dropped by 73% in official tribal records between 1890 and 1900. In 1891, one chief said, "They took our dreams, not our guns." That was the greater loss. By the 1920s, only 3 recognized Comanche medicine men remained. 2 died before ever speaking publicly about what happened during those missing years. But whispers endure. A letter discovered in 2006, written by a Fort Sill interpreter, said, "Some of the shamans, they didn't die. They were changed." And that's what we'll explore next, when an ancient war shield vanished in transit and may have held a topographic code still considered dangerous. 5. Is there a secret map hidden in the last Comanche war shield? In the spring of 1875, during the final days of the Red River War, U.S. troops seized an object so unusual, it was immediately flagged by the Bureau of Ethnology. It wasn't just any war shield. It was 6 feet in diameter, layered with buffalo hide and meteoric iron, and weighed over 70 pounds. Soldiers called it the Sky Drum. But what made this artifact legendary was what was carved into it. Etched beneath layers of ceremonial paint were over 200 symbols, some matching Comanche sun calendars, others resembling topographic linework. A few corresponded to known sacred sites like Medicine Mounds and Mount Scott, while others depicted strange spirals and star formations not found in traditional tribal iconography. In 1881, the shield was scheduled for transfer to the Smithsonian's Bureau of Ethnology. It vanished in Kansas City, and no official explanation was ever released. One former Smithsonian archivist later admitted in a private letter, "We were told to destroy all related correspondence. Someone higher didn't want the artifact cataloged." Strangely, a replica of the shield, created in 2004 by artist Len Red Elk using old sketches, was banned from a state museum exhibit in 2019, just 48 hours before opening. No public reason was given. Internal emails, later leaked, described it as potentially incendiary. So what was the shield hiding? According to Comanche oral historians, certain patterns mirrored ancient trail routes leading to copper-rich caves and burial vaults believed to house pre-Columbian artifacts. Others believe it was a territorial map passed down from star watchers, showing comet paths and meteor sites. And perhaps most disturbing? One etching near the center reads, in Comanche script, "Those who open the path must seal it again with blood." Coming up next, a prison camp that held no criminals, but plenty of underground secrets the military hoped you'd never learn. 6. What was the real purpose of the Fort Sill Comanche prison camp? At first glance, Fort Sill in Oklahoma looks like any other 19th century military post. Built in 1869, it was officially labeled a relocation center during the Indian Wars. But dig deeper, literally, and the story gets far more disturbing. In 1875, more than 70 Comanche, Kiowa, and Apache men, including war leaders like Quanah Parker, were detained here, often without trial. Official records state the goal was assimilation through confinement, but a 1924 declassified War Department memo referred to the site as a psycho-ritual containment facility. Strange term, right? In the 1990s, archaeologists scanning Fort Sill using ground-penetrating radar discovered anomalous underground chambers beneath the old stockade, none of which appear on military blueprints. Some tunnels stretch over 300 feet, and one sealed chamber contained burnt clay tablets and animal bones not native to the region. Then there's the 1924 whistleblower report from a former Army medic, claiming prisoners were subjected to experiments involving sensory deprivation and ritual drug use. The document described peyote exposure and isolation tanks, predating CIA MK Ultra methods by nearly 30 years. He wrote, "They were trying to erase the spirits from them, break their minds so they'd forget the old ways." In 1943, a fire destroyed a portion of the fort's record archive. The official cause? A cigarette. But multiple witnesses said the blaze started in the restricted Bunker E area, now completely sealed by concrete and marked with a single warning, "No entry without clearance." Even stranger, Fort Sill was later home to the U.S. Army's Advanced Field Artillery Training, despite the site being geologically unstable and haunted by equipment failure reports in its archives. One last twist, in 2017, drone footage captured strange light pulses emanating from the sealed bunkers, and all footage was confiscated within 24 hours. So what was really being hidden underground? And why has the government gone to such lengths to bury it? Coming up next, a chilling sound tactic the Comanche may have mastered, capable of erasing a man's mind without touching him. 7. Did the Comanche master an unknown form of tactical sound warfare? In the brutal winter of 1874, during the Red River War, U.S. cavalry scouts began reporting something odd, something they couldn't explain. Soldiers from Colonel Ranald Mackenzie's unit claimed they heard ghost chants echoing across the canyons before ambushes. These weren't war cries. They were low, rhythmic hums that made horses panic and men freeze in place. Some even dropped their rifles. Military documents from the Battle of Palo Duro Canyon, fought in September 1874, include eerie eyewitness notes. One lieutenant wrote, "The Comanche approached with no sound, but our entire column halted. The air thrummed. Some men wept. Others vomited. Over 450 cavalrymen were deployed, yet they reported disorientation, nausea, and paralysis, with no visible attackers. Historians used to dismiss these accounts as stress responses, but new forensic audio research says otherwise. In 2009, acoustic anthropologist Dr. Eric Dennison studied drums recovered from a Comanche burial site in Oklahoma. He discovered that some hides were stretched over hollowed gourds tuned to infrasonic frequencies, below 20 hertz, levels proven to disrupt human equilibrium, vision, and mood. This matches modern research from DARPA on sound as weapon technology. In fact, the U.S. Navy officially tested low-frequency noise for crowd control in 1973 and reported that long exposure caused vomiting and fainting. So how did the Comanche know this 100 years earlier? There's also speculation around sound mirrors, large concave rock formations intentionally carved to amplify echoes. Some of these still exist in caprock canyons, and local ranchers swear they whistle before rainstorms. Even more disturbing, a 1956 Army memo titled Hostile Environmental Frequencies references the Comanche wave pattern as an unsolved phenomenon that should be kept from public analysis. Today, no physical evidence of a sound weapon survives in museums. Most were either lost in transit or stored in private government archives. But if the Comanche truly developed sound-based psychological warfare, the implications are staggering. And if you thought that was chilling, wait till you hear about a secret Comanche battle code the US never cracked and still fears to this day. 8. Was there a Comanche code never broken by the US military? Before the Navajo code talkers became famous in World War II, the Comanche were already using unbreakable battlefield codes, and the US government was quietly terrified of it. During World War I, 14 Comanche soldiers were recruited by the US Army to serve in France. They weren't just scouts or infantry, they were early code communicators, speaking in their native tongue to relay messages that German intelligence could never decipher. What made it so powerful? The Comanche language is tonal, highly contextual, and lacks direct translations for most modern military terms. So they invented them. A tank became turtle. A machine gun was sewing machine. A bomber became pregnant bird. These were not just poetic, they were completely indecipherable to anyone outside the culture. Even within native communities, the dialect spoken by the Comanche code unit was unique to fewer than 100 fluent speakers at the time. This meant that even if intercepted, the messages were impossible to crack by linguists or machines. But here's where it gets strange. After World War II, the CIA attempted to recruit Comanche linguists for Cold War operations. But in 1952, the entire project, codenamed Project Blue Lizard, was abruptly shut down. The official reason? Potential for uncontrolled linguistic autonomy. Some historians speculate the government feared that the Comanche language, if further empowered, could enable encrypted internal communications beyond federal oversight, especially on matters of land, oil rights, and tribal sovereignty. Only one known surviving Comanche code speaker remains today. He lives in Oklahoma and refuses to speak the code, even to researchers. When asked why, he simply said, "Some things were meant for war, and some things should never come back." So if the Navajo code baffled enemies, the Comanche one vanished entirely, on purpose. And the next secret takes us to a cursed patch of ground no one dares dig beneath. 9. What lies beneath the cursed ground of Devil's Rope Hill? Near Quanah, Texas, there's a stretch of land so feared that local ranchers won't even graze cattle near it. Known today as Devil's Rope Hill, this eerie mesa was fenced off by the US government in 1977. With no official explanation. But the Comanche have warned about it for centuries, claiming it was the prison of a powerful sky spirit struck down in a cosmic battle and buried alive beneath the soil. The earliest modern incident occurred in 1899, when 11 US surveyors disappeared overnight while mapping the region. All they left behind were charred boots and a half-melted theodolite, found in a perfect circle burned into the prairie. The Army called it a weather event. Locals called it a curse. In 1942, geologists scanning the region during a mineral survey registered abnormal electromagnetic spikes and massive underground metallic anomalies, over 300 feet wide and buried at consistent depth. One surveyor noted in his logbook, "This is not a natural formation. Something was forged and buried here." That logbook was later seized by the War Department. Comanche elders described the hill as a spiritual gateway, warning that it holds a voice louder than thunder and darker than any night. They believe it was sealed by 7 medicine men using sacred stones, some of which were later removed by treasure hunters. Since then, odd occurrences spiked. Fires starting without ignition sources, cattle found mutilated with no blood, and EM devices malfunctioning within a 500-yard radius. In 2006, a private drone accidentally flew over the restricted airspace. The footage, uploaded briefly online, showed geometric patterns scorched into the earth, matching ancient Comanche symbols for imprisonment and silence. The truth beneath Devil's Rope Hill may never be fully uncovered, but something down there still seems to want out. 10. Why was the last Comanche treaty sealed and never made public? In 1900, as the Comanche Nation faced relentless pressure to surrender their last remaining lands, a treaty was signed between tribal representatives and the U.S. government. Unlike previous agreements, this one was never published in the congressional record. Only 3 known copies were produced, 2 disappeared, and the 3rd remains locked in a private Texas vault, owned by a descendant of a railroad magnate. Why the secrecy? Historians believe this treaty contained clauses that went beyond standard land surrender. Several Comanche oral accounts refer to a mysterious provision giving energy and mineral companies exclusive access to ancestral burial vaults. These vaults were rumored to contain not just bones, but silver artifacts, meteorite iron, and ancient maps passed down from the Numunu prophets. In the 1920s oil boom, this land, once part of the treaty, was suddenly divided into hundreds of leases and sold off without tribal consent. The Quanah Parker family even filed legal objections, claiming the land was sacred. But every attempt to challenge the sales in court was thrown out due to lack of documentation, a problem directly tied to the sealed treaty. By 1962, attempts to publish the treaty or even view its terms were blocked under a rare cultural exemption invoked by the Department of the Interior. That exemption has never been lifted. As of 2023, Comanche activists and historians are still demanding the document be declassified. Some believe it contains language granting the government long-term rights to uranium, which would explain increased survey activity in the 1940s, right before nuclear testing ramped up. And yet, every Freedom of Information Act request since 1981 has been denied. Whatever was written in that final treaty, the government appears desperate to keep it buried. If you thought this was wild, the next video goes even deeper into what history tried to erase. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because these stories aren't in your textbooks, and some were almost buried forever. Watch before they disappear again.